There are 30 years of silence in the Gospels, 30 years between the manger in Bethlehem and the moment Jesus walked to the Jordan River to begin his public ministry. The Gospels give us a few lines: a birth, a flight, a boy in the temple at 12, and then nothing, until he is 30 years old and the world is about to change forever. But what happened in those 30 years? Where was he? What did he feel? What did the Holy Family carry, day after day, in a modest home in Nazareth, knowing what they knew? In the early 19th century, a bedridden Augustinian nun in Germany began to see. Her name was Anne Catherine Emmerich. She was a mystic, a stigmatic, a woman who bore on her body the wounds of the crucified Christ. And over years of illness and prayer, she was given something extraordinary, visions of the hidden life of Jesus and the Holy Family in precise, intimate, overwhelming detail. Visions she described as given to her directly, not imagined, not invented, but received. She did not want them published. She asked for privacy. But a poet named Clemens Brentano sat at her bedside and wrote everything down, and what he recorded has moved readers for 2 centuries, because it does not feel like history. It feels like memory. This is what she saw. It did not look like the arrival of God. It looked like a family that had run out of options. Joseph had spent the evening walking the streets of Bethlehem with Mary at his side, and door after door had been closed in his face. The city was full. The census had brought everyone home at once, and there was no room, not for a carpenter from Nazareth, not for his young wife who was clearly near her time, not for whatever it was they were carrying between them, that neither of them had ever found the right words for. He was not a young man. He had spent decades learning to do God's will, without explanation, to act without understanding, to trust without proof. And that night, in the cold streets of an overcrowded city, he was being asked to do it one more time. They found a cave on the edge of town. Shepherds sometimes used it for shelter. It was open to the wind on one side, rough stone on the others. Joseph gathered what wood he could find. He made it as warm as he was able, and then he withdrew, because what was about to happen was not for him to witness directly. Emmerich describes what came next with a reverence that makes you want to slow down and read very carefully. Mary knelt in prayer in the darkness of that cave, and then the darkness changed. Not suddenly, not like a lamp being lit, but gradually, the way dawn changes the sky. A light began to fill the cave, and it was not coming from any fire. It was coming from within the darkness itself, soft and overwhelming at the same time. The kind of light that does not hurt your eyes but reaches straight into your chest. And in that light, a child. She describes the infant Jesus as luminous. His very being radiated something that had no name in any human language. Mary adored him first, in the silence that comes before words exist for what you are feeling. Then she wrapped him with the particular tenderness of the mother who has waited 9 months to hold this face, and she laid him in the manger. The shepherds came first, rough men whose lives were spent in wind and cold and loneliness, men that the respectable world had largely forgotten about. An angel had split their ordinary night open with light and a voice, and they had come stumbling toward the cave, not knowing what they would find. What they found made them fall to their knees. The Magi came later. Emmerich is precise about this. It was not the same night, not even the same week. They were scholars of the stars, men from the East who had been watching the heavens for signs that most of their contemporaries had stopped believing in. They brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh, gifts that together told a complete story if you knew how to read it. A king, a priest, and a death that would one day save the world. The infant received them with a stillness that astonished them. But joy in this world never lasts undisturbed for long. Even as the Magi were on the road home, a shadow was already moving toward Bethlehem. Its name was Herod, and he had heard the rumor of a newborn king of the Jews, and he intended to make certain that king would never live long enough to challenge him. Heaven moved first. Joseph received the warning in a dream. Emmerich describes him waking with his heart already certain before his mind had finished catching up. He did not deliberate. He did not weigh his options. He rose in the dark, packed what little they had, tools, cloth, a small amount of money, and Mary gathered the infant Jesus, wrapping him close against the cold night air. They left Bethlehem before dawn, before anyone else was stirring, before Herod's soldiers reached the city gates. The journey to Egypt was hundreds of miles through desert terrain, through unfamiliar towns and regions, where no one knew them and no one owed them anything. Emmerich traces their path in remarkable detail, naming stopping places that Egyptian Christian tradition has venerated for centuries, places that archaeologists and pilgrims have found again and again, exactly where she said they would be. She had never traveled to Egypt. She had barely left her convent. One night, she describes them passing through a region controlled by bandits. A group of robbers approached them on the road. Their leader looked at the family, at this tired man, this young woman, this infant, and something stopped him. He looked at the child's face, and something that had been locked inside him for years came loose. He let them pass. More than that, he offered them shelter for the night. His own infant son was sick with fever. That night, the fever broke. Emmerich notes quietly that this man's child would one day walk beside Jesus again, on Calvary. One of the two thieves crucified alongside him. This is how she works. She does not only describe what happened, she traces the invisible threads between moments, the connections that the world calls coincidence and faith calls providence. The mercy shown to a family on a dark road returned 30 years later on the darkest road of all. They reached Egypt. Emmerich describes their arrival in a town called Matara with the eye of someone who had been there. The layout of the streets, the kind of house they found, the neighbors who were cautious at first, and then gradually less so. Joseph found work immediately. He always found work. His hands were his dignity, and he used them without complaint, wherever life put him down. Then one afternoon, the child was thirsty. Mary looked at Joseph, and Joseph looked at the ground, because he had nothing left to give, no well nearby, no water he could reach quickly. And from the dry earth beside them, a spring began to rise, clean, cold, real. Emmerich describes exactly where it happened. Egyptian Christians still venerate that place today. But in that moment, it was not a miracle for history books. It was simply a father saying to his exhausted family, "I see you. I have not forgotten you." A balsam tree near their home grew rapidly and provided shade and healing oil. Jesus, even as a young child of 2 or 3, was fully a child. He laughed. He reached for Mary. He fell asleep in Joseph's arms with the complete trust that only the very young are capable of. But there were quiet moments, early morning moments, when he seemed to be somewhere else entirely, as if he was listening to something no one around him could hear.
Father,
They stayed
who
several
art in
years,
heaven,
long enough that
hallowed be
Jesus
thy
began
name.
to speak, long enough that Mary had taught him his first prayers, his first words of the Psalms, long enough that he had learned, in the ordinary way of children, what sand feels like between small fingers, what it means to be hungry, what it feels like when your mother holds you close, and the world outside is dark and uncertain. Then the angel came again to Joseph. Herod was dead. It was time to go home. Nazareth, a small town in the hills of Galilee. Not important, not beautiful in any particular way. The kind of place that someone from Jerusalem might dismiss with a shrug. And yet this was the place God chose for his son to grow up. For nearly 3 decades, Emmerich describes the house with the eye of someone who had walked through every room. Stone walls, a low ceiling, an inner courtyard where Mary kept a small garden, a workshop where Joseph kept his tools, a room for prayer, a simple table where they ate together. By any standard of the world, it was nothing. By the standard of heaven, It was the most important household in human history. Mary's role in Jesus' upbringing is something Emmerich returns to again and again, with a reverence that is almost overwhelming. She was not simply a mother who fed and clothed her child. She was a woman of extraordinary spiritual depth, someone who understood at a level that went beyond ordinary human knowledge exactly who her son was and what he had come to do. And she had to live with that knowledge every single day, while making breakfast, while drawing water from the well, while watching him sleep. She taught him to pray, not because he did not know how. This is one of the mysteries Emmerich does not try to resolve, but because this was how he chose to enter human experience. As a child, learning from his mother, in the ordinary way, she taught him the Psalms. She taught him the history of Israel, the stories of Abraham, of Moses, of David. Emmerich sees them in the evening, in the courtyard, with the hills of Galilee turning gold in the last light. Mary telling the stories, Jesus listening with a quality of attention unlike any child she had ever known, as if he were not just hearing the stories for the first time, but recognizing them. Joseph taught him carpentry. Emmerich describes this with a particular tenderness. Joseph showing the boy how to hold a plane correctly, how to read the grain of the wood, how to measure twice before you cut. Jesus learning, genuinely learning, not performing the act of learning, the way any boy learns from a father he loves and wants to please. He was not exempt from the effort. He did not conjure finished furniture out of thin air. He learned the slow patience of craft, the satisfaction of a joint that fits perfectly, the honest ache in your shoulders at the end of a long day of real work. Among the children of Nazareth, Emmerich is consistent about this. Jesus was not someone the other children found strange or frightening. He was the one they naturally moved toward. When arguments broke out, which they did constantly, as they do among children everywhere, he seemed to resolve them without asserting any authority at all, simply by being present, simply by the quality of his attention to whoever was hurting. He had no favorites. The slow child and the quick one received the same. The overlooked child and the popular one sat beside each other when he was near. In a world that sorted children by usefulness and status, then as now, this was quietly extraordinary. And as he grew, the healings began, though Emmerich describes them in a way that makes the word miracle feel almost too large. They were smaller than that, more intimate. A sick bird held in small hands, suddenly lifting its wings. A boy in the neighborhood, with a withered arm, that one afternoon was whole. A man on the edge of town who had been blind for years, who after a brief encounter with the young Jesus, held home and saw the faces of his grandchildren for the first time. These things happened without announcement, without an audience gathered to witness. He did not perform. He simply loved, and love in him was not metaphor. It was force. Mary saw all of it. Emmerich describes her as a woman who carried her awareness of her son's identity, not as pride, but as a kind of sacred weight. She was his mother. She worried about him the way mothers worry. She watched him with the particular watchfulness of a parent who knows their child is moving towards something enormous and irreversible, and who has made peace with the fact that she cannot stop it, and who loves him anyway with everything she has. The years passed the way years pass in small towns, through seasons and harvests, through feast days and ordinary days, through the rhythm of Sabbath prayer and weekday work. To anyone watching from the outside, it would have looked like the most unremarkable family in all of Galilee. That is exactly what God had intended. The one episode from Jesus' childhood that the Gospel of Luke preserved for us happens when he is 12 years old, the pilgrimage to Jerusalem for Passover. Every faithful Jewish family made this journey when they could. Emmerich describes the caravan of pilgrims moving south, the dust of it, the songs they sang on the road, the particular excitement of children arriving in a great city for a feast. Jerusalem was overwhelming compared to Nazareth. The temple, which Herod had been rebuilding for decades, rose over the city like a mountain of white stone and gold. Jesus had been here before, as an infant. He had no memory of it in any ordinary sense. And yet, Emmerich describes something shifting in him the moment Jerusalem came into view, as if something recognized something, as if a door somewhere inside him that had always been there quietly opened. The Passover celebrations lasted 7 days. Emmerich sees Jesus moving through them with a reverence that was different from the other children his age. Not solemn, not joyless, but profoundly attentive, as if he were reading something in the rituals that everyone else was moving past too quickly to see. On the last day, when the caravan began to organize itself for the journey home, Jesus was not with them. Mary and Joseph searched for 3 days. Emmerich describes this period with great compassion, and I want you to sit with it for a moment, because these were not careless parents. These were people who had been entrusted with the most precious life in the history of the world, and they had lost him in a city of 100,000 people. 3 days. 3 days of asking strangers, of retracing steps, of the particular terror that only a parent who has lost a child in a crowd can truly understand. Mary did not lose faith, but she suffered. Fully, humanly, without armor, she suffered. They found him in the temple, seated among the scholars, the most learned men in Israel, men who had devoted their entire lives to the study of the Scriptures. And he was not sitting quietly at their feet. He was in dialogue with them, asking questions, offering interpretations, making connections between texts that these scholars had spent lifetimes studying and had never seen so clearly. Emmerich describes the faces of these men. Astonishment, yes, but underneath the astonishment, something they could not quite name, because this was not a gifted child performing for an audience. There was a quality behind his words that was different. The words were simple. The understanding behind them was not. Mary said to him, and Luke records these words exactly 2,000 years later, because a mother does not forget the words her child says that reach all the way down to her bones. "Son, why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been searching for you with great anxiety." And Jesus said, "Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" Emmerich lingers on this moment, on Mary's face as she received those words, on the subtle shift in Jesus' expression, not defiance, not coldness, but something that existed in the space between human apology and divine truth. He was 12 years old, and he had spoken plainly, for the first time in their presence, about who he was. They returned to Nazareth together, and Luke tells us something that Emmerich found deeply moving. He went down with them and was obedient to them. He who had just demonstrated a wisdom beyond all earthly measure went home and was obedient. God, having spoken, chose to return to the silence, not because the silence was defeat, but because the silence was not yet finished. Joseph does not appear in the Gospels after the temple episode. At some point between Jesus at age 12 and the beginning of his public ministry at around age 30, Joseph died. Scripture does not record the moment. Tradition gives us no date, no details. He is simply gone from the story, the way quiet people sometimes disappear from the world, without drama, without the recognition they deserved. But Emmerich saw it. She describes Joseph in his final years as a man worn with age and work, but not diminished. His body carried the weight of decades, the cold flight into Egypt, the years in a foreign country, the long years of daily labor in Nazareth. He was old. He was tired in the honest way that good men grow tired, fully, without bitterness, without complaint. But his spirit, Emmerich says, was radiant, as if every ordinary, hidden, unrecognized act of service had been quietly storing up a light inside him that age could not touch. As if all those years of doing the right thing, when no one was watching, had been building something. His final illness came slowly. He spent more time in prayer, less in the workshop. He spoke less. He watched Jesus and Mary with the eyes of someone who is beginning, gently, to let go of the most beautiful thing he has ever held. Jesus sat with him, often, long hours, simply present. Joseph would sometimes reach for his hand, this young man who was his son in every way that mattered, who was also something Joseph had never quite found the right words for, something that he understood with his heart and trusted with his whole life, even when his mind could not contain it. In his final hours, Emmerich describes a scene that has reduced readers to tears for centuries. Jesus administered the last anointing to Joseph, the sacrament of the dying, with his own hands, quietly, with complete tenderness. The Son of God cared for the man who had been his earthly father, who had carried him out of Egypt in the dark, who had taught him to hold a plane correctly, who had loved him without needing to fully understand him, who had given him the gift that fathers give their sons when they do it right. The experience of being loved unconditionally in the ordinary days, in the work and the meals and the evenings and the early mornings. Joseph looked at them both, Mary and Jesus, in those last moments. Emmerich says he could see, with the particular clarity that sometimes comes at the threshold between this life and the next, what they truly were, what he had been asked to protect all those years, what God had trusted him with. And rather than feeling small, he felt only gratitude, oceanic, overwhelming, wordless gratitude. He died with their hands in his. The angels came for him quietly, the way everything important in Joseph's life had happened. Quietly, without spectacle, he was carried home. The grief in the house in Nazareth was real. Emmerich does not soften it. Jesus wept. Mary wept. From the deep place where love and loss are the same thing, where you cannot separate what you are grateful for from what you are losing. Jesus prepared the body himself, washed him, wrapped him, honored him with every gesture of love that the human hands of a son can offer a father. The burial was simple, private. After Joseph, the house was quieter. There were two of them now, a mother and her son, both knowing that the clock was running, that the silence they had shared together was drawing toward its end. And neither of them spoke of it, because some things you carry in prayer, not in words. Between Joseph's death and the morning Jesus walked toward the Jordan River, Emmerich describes a period of deepening interiority. He still worked. He still walked through Nazareth, still spoke with neighbors, still watched the seasons turn over the hills of Galilee. But something in him was gathering, like water rising behind a dam, like the sky in the hour before dawn, when the darkness has not yet broken, but you can already feel that it is about to. He prayed for long hours in the night, not as a performance. He inhabited prayer the way the rest of us inhabit breathing, as if for him it was not a turning toward God from somewhere else, but a turning within himself toward the center of everything. Emmerich says she cannot fully describe what she saw in those moments. She says only that it was the most beautiful thing she ever witnessed. Mary watched all of it. She knew, with the precise and terrible knowledge that only mothers possess, that these days were the last of what they had shared in the ordinary way. That soon, he would step out of the life they had built together and into the life he had come for, the life that had always been waiting at the end of the silence. She did not hold him back. She held him close, in the way that parents learned to hold their children when they know letting go is coming, not clutching, not bargaining, just fully present, fully there for every remaining ordinary morning, every remaining ordinary meal, every remaining evening prayer said together at the table in the fading light. Emmerich describes Jesus walking through Nazareth. In those final weeks, past the houses where he had played as a child, past the workshop where he had learned to shape wood, past the faces of people he had known his entire life. And she says he looked at all of these things, these deeply ordinary things, with a love that was almost unbearable in its intensity. He knew what was coming. He knew the road that lay ahead of him. He knew where it ended. And he loved the olive trees anyway. He loved the dust of the streets anyway. He loved the people who would not always love him back, who would one day shout for his crucifixion, who would turn away when he needed them most. He looked at all of it, and he loved it. With everything he had, without reservation. The night before he left Nazareth, Emmerich describes a quiet evening with Mary. They sat together in the home they had shared, the home that had held 30 years of prayer and work and love and loss. They said the evening prayers together, the same prayers Mary had taught him as a small child in Egypt, in the dark, far from home. And then he held her, for a long time, without words. She understood. She had always understood. In the morning, he left. He walked the road toward the Jordan River, toward the desert, where John was baptizing, toward the beginning of everything the world had been waiting for since the garden. He walked as a man, dusty, ordinary to anyone who passed him on the road, just another traveler, heading south. But Emmerich says that the veil between what was visible and what was real was extraordinarily thin that day. Heaven was watching, all of it, and it was holding its breath. 30 years of hidden life, 30 years of silence, of carpentry, of prayers before dawn, of learning and growing and loving in the ordinary way. 30 years that the world passed by without a second glance, and yet every single one of those years was necessary. Every ordinary moment was part of the preparation. Every meal shared at a simple table, every hour in the workshop, every evening prayer said in a small room in a town that nobody important had ever heard of. God did not consider this time wasted, not a single breath of it. Anne Catherine Emmerich died in Nazareth, 1824, bedridden, her body marked with wounds she had not asked for, her visions recorded by a poet who sat at her bedside because he understood that what she was saying needed to be preserved. She had never wanted fame. She had asked for privacy. History did not grant it. Got what she saw. What she described of these hidden 30 years is not church doctrine. The church does not require you to believe it. But 2 centuries of readers have encountered these accounts and found in them something that feels inexplicably like recognition, like something they knew but had never heard said out loud. A picture of what holiness looks like when no one is watching. A picture of what God chose when he could have chosen anything, when he came to live among us, not power, not spectacle, not a throne, a workshop, a family table, a mother's voice teaching a child his first prayers in the dark of an Egyptian night, a father's hands guiding a boy through the grain of the wood. If you are living a life that feels hidden right now, unremarkable, ordinary, unseen, let this speak to you. The years the world does not notice are not the years that heaven ignores. They may be the most important years of all. Thank you for watching. If something in this story touched you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it today. And if you want to go deeper into the lives of the saints and the stories of faith, subscribe to Venadol Faith. We will keep looking,